Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel Bilingual Mingle. My name is Tanya and today we are joined by a special guest, my husband Daniel.
Great to be on the channel Bilingual Mingle, and I guess great to also it's an honor to be the first guest, or I guess technically second guest if you count Leon. He's probably the first guest, so
That's true.
It's an honor to be here.
So the reason I actually invited Daniel to join me in this video is because today's video is going to be a Q&A, and I collected actually common and popular questions that we very often get from our family members and friends regarding our decision to raise Leon as a bilingual child. And I thought that it would be interesting for other people who are also at the crossroad of making this decision for their family to find out what was reasoning behind our decision and our thought process and different ups and downs that we already experienced or expect to experience in this process of raising Leon as bilingual. So if you're ready and if you'd like to learn more about this, let's start. So the first question on this list that we ask very often is, did you know in advance that you'd like your child to be bilingual?
Yeah, very common question. I guess when I married someone who was bilingual, I was pretty confident that my child was going to be bilingual just by default there. But didn't really think about it much prior to that. I guess one of the reasons for that is because at least in the United States, we always are focused on flashy things like politics or technology, but language and communication doesn't really get the light of day, in a lot of discourse. I didn't really think about it much until I met you, and you spoke Russian, and I thought that was so cool, and then it kind of became a part of my life for the first time as someone very close to me who speaks another language, whereas previously it had always been like friends or friends of friends that spoke different languages. It didn't really touch me, so yeah.
Actually, for me, since I was always learning multiple languages from the very young age, I always wanted my children, whenever I thought about it, to be bilinguals. I never really knew that I'm going to marry someone from a different country, but that was not an obstacle for me to think that I'm still going to introduce more than one language to my child. So in this way, I always wanted my children to be bilinguals, but I didn't really know what pair of languages they're going to learn. And obviously, when I met Daniel, things got pretty obvious, and we didn't really have a doubt that English and Russian gonna be two languages that we're going to introduce to our children when they're born. So the second question that we also receive very often is, how did you prepare? Is there any specific literature that you've read? So since as I mentioned, I always wanted my children to be bilinguals, and I kind of always had a confidence that because I'm bilingual myself, I'm gonna have an inside feeling of what to do, and therefore I didn't really have any fear or lack of confidence in my approach or the things that I'm going to do with my child. However, what was interesting for me is to see the result, and I started doing my research and started looking up YouTube videos about how other people do this, because what's always interesting to take a look at is really to trace the development of some child who is bilingual, and to kind of watch video after video about his or her progress. And that's something I didn't find. There are a couple of very popular videos, and really by couple I mean like 4 or 5 very popular YouTube videos where people are talking about the pairs of languages they introduce to their children, but those pairs are always kind of random, and didn't find pair like Russian and English to be used on a constant basis, and so for someone to have been providing a constant update about their child's bilingual journey. So that's why I thought that the channel like this would be beneficial for families like ours and others. However, I read some literature definitely to have kind of like a knowledge base of what I'm talking about and what I should be prepared for. And one of the most memorable books that I found the most useful personally for me was Virginia Rogonaud's book Bilingual by Choice. The reason I like this book a lot is that Virginia in her book provides her own personal journey of introducing to teaching two languages, English and French, to her daughters, and her approach was really personal. The examples that she was sharing with us were very personal, like from her daily life, and that's what I found very interesting and useful for me.
Yeah, I guess all I can really add to that is in terms of preparation, I think that as a first-time dad, I think there was a lot of preparation that just kind of went into getting used to raising a child. Especially I was an only child, so for me, like having a little guy to take care of was a big deal. So there's a lot of kind of preparation work that went into just like the the very basics of making sure that he's okay, and I really focused on that. So unfortunately, I didn't do a ton of like really proactive work for language. It was kind of more learning on the fly, trying to be flexible. And as I started to see that he was kind of engaging and very starting to get communicative, I would again, same thing, look at YouTube videos, sort of look up like making sure I'm not doing something wrong. I would say the main thing that was important for me to figure out though was sort of squashing some of these scare tactics that I see kind of sprinkled all over the place, where it's like the classic one of oh well, if you teach two languages, you're going to stunt their growth in communicating right in the dominant language or the native language. Things like oh well, one parent has to speak one language all the time, and if you even try to cross pollinate, right, it's going to be this year you're going to confuse them and you're going to screw them all up. And I just think it's when you really look into that stuff and you actually read some literature on that, it's very clear that it's not like everything's sort of set in stone. You can't deviate a little bit, right? It's not like you're gonna break their brain and they're not gonna know how to talk, right? So I think just overcoming that hurdle of just stop being afraid, of trying different things.
So the third question that we asked very often is, when Leon was born, were you able to follow your bilingual language learning plan with him?
Yeah, it's probably going to surprise some people, but I actually think that I was able to. I think the reason for that is because the way I attacked this was sort of a general approach. I kind of came into it sort of open-minded and sort of just tried to sit him down and tackle, sort of cast a wide net and start to see what he likes and what he wants to interact to. And then I sort of focused in as time went on. I got a little bit more specific, a little bit more disciplined. Because I was learning also along with him about how to do this and how to do this with Leon, more importantly, which is the most important thing, right? So I would say my plan sort of, I was able to follow it because it was general, but obviously this plan was tweaked over time, and it did change, right? My initial way of doing this has changed from when we first started till even now.
I actually had a very strict plan in mind. It was I wanted to follow a poll approach, one parent, one language approach, because that's how it seemed like the most logical to us. And again, as Daniel mentioned, we were really afraid to to mess something up in his head in terms of his the way he learns and understands languages. But a poll approach really didn't work for us from the very beginning, because since Daniel does not speak Russian, every time when there were three of us present in one room and spending time together, we had to default to English, which is absolutely normal and okay with me, but that's already not a poll approach. And I found it to be very exhausting to constantly not answer Daniel, or for instance answer Daniel back in English, and then at the same time repeat the same phrase in Russian to Leon, because that's there's a lot of advice, pieces of advice this way when you follow a poll approach to kind of translate the same information or repeat the same phrase that you just said in both languages to your child.
Like technically it makes sense, but I think in practice it's a little bit tricky.
It's very exhausting, and it's not like that we didn't want to pay, spend extra efforts. It's just really exhausting, and at this point it doesn't seem like you just living your like daily life, but it's you that you're in a constant kind of just in a constant treadmill of making sure that you stick to the approach, which is not something that is gonna help you stay relaxed with your child. So yeah, I understood it pretty quickly, but I was not disappointed. It's not that I just felt like I lost the ground, I didn't know how to proceed. I just understood that we have to be creative, and only us are gonna know what's gonna be the best for Leon in terms of his language development, and just we have to trust our guts with it. Next question that I also received, not very often, but received at least during first couple of months after Leon was born, is what was my first language interaction with him? And I wish I would remember more from this experience, but I definitely remember one certain feeling that I would like to share with our audience. I remember when I just got Leon, and I kind of started holding him in my arms. There were a lot of people around me. There was a nurse, there was doctors, there was Daniel, and probably a lot of people who watching this video and who just became first-time parents gonna understand me very well in terms of this feeling. You don't feel like this is kind of like your child. You don't know what to do with this person that you're supposed to now take care of, and you need some time to get used to this, to get used to the fact that there's someone else you now have to take care of, and who is completely relies on you 100% of his life and time. And I think that because of it, I didn't really have this instant connection with Leon, and it was not because of language, but it was just because I just became a parent and I had to process this experience. But at the same time, I was in the room with a lot of people around me, and it seemed like that everybody were looking at me, and I felt obligated, and that's just again the feeling I had in my head. I felt obligated for them to understand what I was doing with my child, because I guess subconsciously was not confident that everything that I was doing or saying was correct, and therefore I felt that I have to speak in English because that's the only way they could understand me. I also was quite exhausted, and I didn't feel like thinking too much or too deep about what was going on. So yeah, the first words that I pronounced to Leon were in English, and I'm not blaming myself for it, but it's just you can't help, like you're just doing what is easiest for you in the circumstances that you're in. However, later on, the first time when I was able to stay with him on my own, it was at night. And I remember when I took him from his little aquarium crib, like we call it, I spoke Russian with him, and that was very memorable feeling, and memorable feeling for me. I will always remember how it happened, and that was, I think, and I'm really confident 100%, that's when I started establishing this mom-son connection with him. All right, let's move forward. So how is it going now, and what do you think is your biggest strength, weakness in this bilingual language learning process?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going pretty well. I mean, I have seen progress. I mean, I've seen a lot of progress, which I guess I take that as a small victory. I guess I'll start with the weakness first. I mean, it's definitely been challenging because there are, it's two different alphabets. So because of that, there are some letters that look exactly the same but sound completely different, right? And because of that, I've sort of I have to pause, right? So like the B is B or V in Russian is a good example of a letter which is so common. Everyone learns their ABCs, right, in English. But because we want to prioritize Russian a little bit, because it's not like, he hears English all the time. He's going to hear English all the time in his daily life. So we wanted to, make sure Russian was really, implemented very, very early and very efficiently with him. But because of that, I'm sort of feel limited sometimes, because I'm like, I want to teach him like his ABCs, right? But then it's like, well, I got to stop and say, am I going to confuse him? Is he going to be looking at this letter and thinking it makes two different sounds? So sometimes it's like a give and take, and I feel a little bit like, there again, like you're almost like you have one hand tied behind your back, which makes things challenging. You have to kind of think of new ways to teach him. But that kind of leads me to my strength, which is, I guess, I try to be very flexible with this type of stuff. I don't think kids are cardboard cutouts. I think, while I think literature on language and bilingualism is very important, I don't think it's everything. I don't think you can really read a book and, have, this is exactly what I need to do for my son. Yeah. This is what, and it's going to work. I think kids are very unique. And because of that, I think the greatest strength you can really have is to understand them and be flexible to sort of tweak your plans to tailor them. And I think a good example of this is Leon has always been very interested in animals. And I know that the letter S, for instance, is a kind of a tough one for kids to say, because it's not really like your ahs, your ba, your da, your ma, right? It's s, right? And it's not really easy to pronounce or say or to teach them. And so the way I tackled that was, I saw he was looking at the snake in some of his stories, and the snake kind of has an S shape. The snake also says hiss, right? So I kind of made him associate like the S sound with the snake. And very quickly he caught on, and I think S was one of his first English letters that he actually caught, even though it's a more complex letter. So just little things like that, I think it's probably my greatest strength, is just seeing what he's interested in and trying to change the plan to fit his interests.
Yeah. I would say for me, since I'm spending the majority of time with him during the week, during the working week, I think my biggest strength is time. I have time on my side, and the majority of time right now, at least at this point of his life, he speaks Russian. Just again because I'm the person who spends the majority of time with him during the weekday. I would say that definitely me being bilingual also helps, because I remember actually some of the some of the experiences and things that I went through when I was learning English as a second language, and Spanish also as a third language I was learning at some point in high school. So these feelings and the kind of being able to transfer my experience and kind of relive it again with Leon helps me a lot. I have a lot of this, again, very useful tips and things that worked for me that I can teach him. My weaknesses, I would say, is that even though I'm trying to be creative with how I teach language, and I'm a linguist, I'm still, again, kind of strict in terms of what should go first and second, what you should learn, what letters you should learn if we're talking about alphabet, and I'm always trying to push as many language learning activities as possible, even though Leon sometimes gets tired of them. So I'm still learning what Daniel thinks he says he mastered, and I think that he actually did. I'm still learning how to be creative, and actually creating this channel was one of those ways for me to share my experience and maybe look back at it later on and see where I was and what I thought during this really fascinating experience for all of our family.
Yeah, it sounds like this question is showing us that we could really learn a little bit from each other.
That's true.
In terms of our
That's true, and that's very important to observe your partner interacting with your child and learning, teaching language to him or her. That's really also helps you to understand maybe things that you can do differently, or things that you can do also the same, because you see that it works and you can do the same in your own in the language that you share with your child. Okay, so the next question is, what are your daily language activities with him? So I have a system and I have a certain amount of activities I'm trying to have with him per day. Definitely it is alphabet. We'll learn an alphabet. We're not learning new letters every day, but I at least try to introduce 1-2 letters per week to him, and obviously we keep repeating the older letters that we learned with him. Another activity would be syllables. So we have those really great cards. I'm going to leave the link to those cards actually in the description for this video down below. Really great cards with syllables, with Russian syllables that rhyme also with sentence, and basically what you talking about is object is demonstrated on the card that helps child to memorize the object and to also memorize syllable that is used to pronounce or to name this object. So that's one of Leon's really favorite language learning activities with me, because he already memorized almost all of those cards. He knows how to show them. He also can pronounce some syllables, and he also sometimes, even when Daniel spends time with him, also takes out these cards and teaches, which is actually something that he just started doing. He teaches those syllables to Daniel because he understands that Daniel does not speak the same language as we speak with him. So this is
pretty humbling.
This is really pretty fascinating, and he just started doing it. He's 18 months right now, and he just started feeling like he needs to teach Daniel some of the syllables, or at least some sounds that he already knows. It's always reading books. I always read books to him, and it's certain set of books that we read per day. It really depends on his mood or time of the day when we read those books. We always talk. I'm really vocal with him, and I'm kind of trying to always name things. Even when he doesn't do it, he just points and I name them, and I'm consistent with naming things, and I'm consistent with expressing my emotions and expressing my feelings with the words in Russian. We watch a lot of I don't want to say a lot, but we watch a wide variety of cartoons, that not just cartoons, but also the types of animation that teaches you language, that I also find being useful for him as well, because again, we are really limited in terms of the amount of people that speak Russian to him, and my parents, his grandparents, and his aunt, my sister, they speak with him every day via WhatsApp, and I also believe that this is such an important thing for him to see that there are the family members who speak their minority language, and with whom he would be able to use minority language in the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my language learning activity for him, I guess, time is really the big driver of this for me, because it really depends on whether it's a weekday or a weekend. I guess for weekdays, it's really just, trying to be, efficient. So I try to, do things like, for things like walks, right? Also, when I take him for walks, that eats up a huge chunk of time. So what I really do is I focus on things like, sort of object, learning, right? So associating, common objects that we come across with words or actions, right? And a good example would be when he's walking with me, sometimes I'll, teach him run, like we can run, and, or ready, set, go. And he kind of associates that with, movement and him running down to the park with me. We always see the moon kind of in the sky in the evening, and the suns and the stars. So, he always points at that, and that's moon's actually one of his first words that he's gotten comfortable saying. And a lot of objects at the park. So again, a lot of these sort of, point and look, and, like let's try new sounds with this object, and let's associate that sound and that word with this object that we're actually touching or we're looking at. So that's kind of my weekday. That's really all I have time for. On the weekends, it's more strict. Things like the blocks, right? Classic learning, alphabet blocks. So we try to build words like bus, and we'll put like a little toy like of a bus on there, so we can associate the actual object that he's looking at with the spelled out word that he can kind of try to put together himself. We have a whiteboard, so I'll try to draw letters, sometimes even words with, my crudely, very artistic skilled pictures on the board. So we'll do a lot of that sort of, writing out. 'Cause, I want him to always interact when he's doing a lot of this language learning as much as possible, whether it's pointing at things or whether it's actually him building the blocks out or writing himself. And recently he even tried to, he drew out the rain. He put the little blue dots and he even associated that with what was. Yeah, he actually drew, one of his first things he drew was the, blue dots, and then he was like, oh, he understood that was rain. From what was outside happening at that moment. It was raining, and so
that was pretty impressive also.
Yeah. That's basically my activities for him for the week and weekends.
Hey, so the next one would be, do you compare your child's progress with other bilingual kids on the playground, if there are any?
Oh my gosh, yeah, all the time. I always do. I hate myself for it, but I always do. I can't help it. It's such a natural thing to do. I feel like it's such a tough habit to break. But yeah, I mean, when I see kids on the playground and I hear them saying things that Leon isn't saying yet, my first thought is like, how old are they? How old are they?
Are they bilinguals?
Well, are they bilinguals, or even simpler, like, are they a year and a half like him, or are they 2 years? Like, do we have time to catch up to them?
Yeah.
Like, is it, are they 2 and I have a whole half of a year for him to start saying, I don't know, onomatopoeia, right, or something like that. So I just. It's really it's tough because you want your child to be well, everyone's child's the best, but you want him to be comfortable and you want him to be on par with everybody else. It's just a natural, I think, parental instinct, and it's so tough to just kind of trust in them that they're gonna figure this out, even if they're not saying what other kids are saying. It's okay, and you don't have to freak out and worry about it. But it's also sort of on you, because whatever your child isn't doing, I think a lot of parents reflect on themselves. Like if your kid isn't saying a common word that other kids are saying around his or her age group, you're like, oh boy, what am I doing wrong? I clearly screwed this whole thing up.
You instantly reflect it on yourself.
Right, and then to your point, the bilingualism piece kind of plays in, because since we're a little bit of a different family, at least in in this area, Russian English isn't a very kind of common dynamic.
Yeah,
in South Philly here.
Yeah.
Other thoughts start creeping into your head of Am I hurting him by doing this bilingual? And even though you don't believe that, you can't help but humor those thoughts if you see other kids saying different words that your son isn't saying. So it's just it's tough. It's definitely something I work on every single day, and I'm sort of not succeeding too well, but I'm giving it my best shot.
So I'm definitely can say that I'm a step ahead of where Daniel is, just because I have more chances to go for a walk with Leon to different playgrounds during the working week. And definitely had such thoughts in the past. However, I started working with those thoughts because I just see how Leon, he's confident, and that's all that is important for me. He's confident in his choice of whether or not he wants to approach a child and whether or not he wants to interact. He's also confident in terms of what language he wants to use during the time when he's at the playground. He's sometimes he's more than fine to go and play with a child, and he understands that the child speaks English. Sometimes he doesn't want to do this, and he wants to just stick around with me because he knows I speak Russian. So this confidence is what keeps me going, and I think that what I'm trying to always do is to catch the signs of him being confident or not. And I think a lot of his confidence really now comes from the fact whether he understands or not what's going on a different levels, and language is obviously one of the basic levels. But I definitely compare, not in terms of the progress necessarily, but more in terms of interaction, maybe this sense of confidence, because I think that for bilingual children, developing the confidence is very important, because that's what's gonna determine their future desire to learn and get more engaged with the languages that they are learning as bilinguals. I still compare, but it's more that but it's more observation than comparison. I'm always actually very happy to see a bilingual child in the playground succeeding in using both languages, and I can't really wait for Leon to do the same, because I think it's so cool, and it's really fascinating how quickly they can switch between different language systems. So that was it. If you like this video, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel down below and hit the like button if you want to encourage us to create more videos like this one. And just want to remind all of you, if you are considering also staying in solidarity with Ukrainian people during these hard times, you live somewhere close to Philadelphia and nearby areas, please consider donating to United Ukrainian American Relief Committee. We've already made our first donation, and definitely also please reach out to me if you live somewhere nearby and would like me to stop by and collect your donation, because we're definitely gonna return back there in a week. Also, if you know someone who was relocated because of this conflict and right now trying to settle down in the United States, I would be more than happy to provide some translation help, or maybe even help or share my experience with immigration to the United States. So if you know someone who got affected and suffered from this conflict, please feel free to ask them to reach out to me, and I'll be more than happy to get in touch with them and provide any help I can. So please stay tuned for my next upcoming video, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye!